Hey, car enthusiasts! The 1960s are often remembered as a golden era for American automobiles. It was the time of muscle cars, sleek designs, and unforgettable classics. But not every car that rolled off the assembly line was a hit. In fact, some were downright disasters. Today, we're counting down the 15 dumbest and worst cars to come out of America in the 1960s. Let's dive in and explore these automotive flops that history would rather forget. Before the Jeep Wagoneer became the iconic and beloved SUV it is today, its early iterations under Kaiser Jeep were far from the refined, powerful vehicles we associate with the name. Introduced in the early 1960s, the Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer was one of the first attempts to blend the utility of a rugged off-road vehicle with the comfort of a family car. While it eventually set the stage for the modern SUV, these early models had more than their share of shortcomings that made them clunky, underpowered, and not nearly as capable as the versions that would come later. The concept behind the Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer was undeniably forward-thinking. At a time when most family cars were sedans and station wagons, the Wagoneer aimed to offer the best of both worlds, providing families with the space and comfort they needed while maintaining the off-road prowess Jeep was known for. However, the execution of that vision in the early models left much to be desired. These vehicles had a rough utilitarian feel to them, lacking the smooth ride and stylish design elements that would define later SUVs. One of the most glaring issues with the early Wagoneers was their underpowered engine. The Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer was equipped with engines that struggled to provide adequate power for the vehicle's size and weight. With sluggish acceleration and poor fuel efficiency, it felt more like a chore to drive than an adventure vehicle. Whether on highways or off-road trails, the engine seemed to strain under any real demand, making the Wagoneer feel less rugged than its marketing suggested. In terms of design, the early Wagoneers had an awkward, boxy shape that lacked the polished look of later models. While the vehicle was functional, its bulky appearance and unrefined lines didn't make it stand out for any particular reason, except perhaps for looking out of place compared to sleeker, more modern cars of the same era. Its somewhat clumsy design was more reminiscent of work trucks than family cars, making it a strange vehicle for buyers who wanted the comforts of a car with the capabilities of a Jeep. Inside, the Wagoneer was similarly lacking in finesse. The interiors were sparse with minimal features and materials that felt cheap and utilitarian. For a vehicle that was supposed to merge family comfort with utility, it did little to elevate the driving experience beyond the basics. Later iterations would see significant improvements in terms of comfort and luxury, but these early models fell flat in delivering a well-rounded driving experience. Despite its flaws, the Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer was an important stepping stone in the evolution of the SUV. It paved the way for the more refined and capable versions that would follow, especially when Jeep began to refine the vehicle's design and performance in the decades to come. Today, the Jeep Wagoneer is remembered as a groundbreaking vehicle that helped define the SUV market, but its early years were more of a rough draft than the finished product that would later captivate drivers around the world. In hindsight, the early Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer models serve as a reminder of the growing pains that come with innovation. While they may not have been the most impressive vehicles of their time, they laid the groundwork for what would become one of the most iconic SUVs in automotive history. These early models were far from perfect, but they were a first step toward a concept that would revolutionize the industry in the years to come. The Buick Skylark of the early 1960s is a classic example of a car that had potential but initially missed the mark. When it was first introduced, it was positioned as a smaller, more affordable option in Buick's lineup, intended to appeal to a growing market of consumers looking for a stylish yet practical vehicle. However, instead of standing out, the early Skylark models struggled with awkward proportions and a lackluster performance that left much to be desired. One of the biggest issues with the first Skylarks was its uninspiring design. The car's proportions felt off, with a high roofline and somewhat boxy shape that lacked the sleek, aerodynamic curves that were becoming popular during the era. In an automotive landscape that was increasingly favoring bold, aggressive lines and low-slung bodies, the Skylark looked rather plain and unremarkable. The front end, with its wide grille and relatively narrow headlights, lacked the visual punch that other cars of the time had, giving the Skylark an appearance that could easily be described as bland. Despite Buick's reputation for producing elegant and refined vehicles, the early Skylark models were surprisingly underwhelming. They lacked the distinctive styling cues that would make them stand out in the showroom, and this ultimately hurt their appeal. While it wasn't necessarily unattractive, the Skylark's conservative design made it fade into the background when compared to sportier, more dynamic models from competitors like Chevrolet, Ford, and Pontiac. Performance was another area where the early Skylark failed to make a significant impact. While later Skylark models would go on to feature more powerful engines and impressive handling, the first iterations of the car were somewhat sluggish. Equipped with a modest V6 or optional V8 engine, the Skylark didn't have the muscle to compete with the burgeoning crop of performance-oriented cars that were gaining popularity in the early 1960s. The car's acceleration was decent but far from exhilarating, and its handling, while competent, wasn't particularly sporty. This made the Skylark feel more like a practical family car than the spirited, youthful vehicle it was perhaps trying to be. Moreover, the Skylark's identity crisis didn't do it any favors. At a time when car buyers were becoming increasingly passionate about performance and style, the early Skylark seemed unsure of what it wanted to be. It wasn't quite a luxury car, nor was it a true performance vehicle, and this lack of a clear direction made it difficult for the Skylark to carve out a niche in the market. Buyers who wanted a Buick often gravitated towards more established models, while those looking for something sportier or more powerful found better options elsewhere. In terms of features, the early Skylark wasn't particularly groundbreaking either. While it was a comfortable car, offering a smooth ride and a decently appointed interior, there was little about it that truly set it apart from the competition. Buick had built a reputation for luxury and sophistication, but the Skylark felt like a more modest offering, which didn't quite live up to the brand's name. However, the story of the Skylark doesn't end with its early struggles. Over time, Buick recognized the shortcomings of the first Skylark models and worked to address them. By the mid to late 1960s, the Skylark underwent significant redesigns that gave it a much-needed infusion of style and power. The car became sleeker, sportier, and more aggressive, embracing the performance-oriented trends of the muscle car era. With the introduction of more powerful engines, including the option for V8s that could really move, the Skylark began to develop a reputation as a more formidable vehicle. It was no longer the underwhelming, forgettable car of its early years, but rather a stylish and competitive option in Buick's lineup. In retrospect, the early 1960s Skylark stands as a reminder of how even established brands can sometimes miss the mark. Its awkward proportions and uninspiring performance may have kept it from being a standout in its early years. But the car's eventual evolution into a more stylish and powerful machine shows that even underwhelming beginnings can lead to greater things. The early Skylark models may have been forgettable, but they laid the groundwork for a nameplate that would go on to make a lasting impact in the years to come. While the Pontiac Le Mans would eventually carve out a lasting legacy as a performance legend in the muscle car era, its early years were far less thrilling. The first iteration of the Pontiac Tempest Le Mans, introduced in the early 1960s, was a more modest, understated car that lacked the aggressive styling and power that would later define the brand. Rather than being a bold entry into the burgeoning performance car market, the early Le Mans models came across as fairly unremarkable. Introduced as an upscale trim package for the Pontiac Tempest, the early Le Mans models were meant to add a touch of refinement and style to Pontiac's midsize lineup. However, in terms of performance, these cars were underwhelming. Equipped with a small four-cylinder engine and later a V6, the early Le Mans models didn't deliver the muscle or speed that would come to define the Pontiac name in later years. While the car was adequate for daily driving, it certainly didn't live up to the performance expectations that enthusiasts would come to associate with the name in the mid to late 1960s. With horsepower figures that barely kept pace with its competitors, the early Le Mans models struggled to capture the excitement that would later become synonymous with the brand. In terms of design, the early Le Mans was also relatively tame. The bodywork was restrained, with none of the bold lines or aggressive stance that would later define Pontiac's muscle cars. Instead, the early Le Mans models were styled more conservatively, with rounded edges and a somewhat unassuming profile that lacked the visual flair of cars like the Chevrolet Chevelle or Ford Fairlane. While the later Le Mans models would adopt sleeker, more muscular styling that turned heads on the road, the early models were far more understated, blending in rather than standing out. The lack of identity was another issue for the early Le Mans. Positioned as a mid-size car, it didn't quite fit in with the sporty image that Pontiac would later cultivate. At the time, the brand was still experimenting with its lineup, trying to figure out where the Le Mans would fit in. The result was a car that seemed somewhat confused. It wasn't a true luxury vehicle, nor was it a performance car, leaving it in a sort of automotive limbo. Other mid-size cars on the market were beginning to push the boundaries in terms of performance and style, but the early Le Mans remained more focused on practicality than passion. Of course, this would all change as Pontiac refined its approach to the Le Mans. By the mid-1960s, Pontiac had found the formula that would turn the Le Mans into an iconic name in the performance car world. The introduction of the GTO option in 1964, originally part of the Le Mans lineup, was a game-changer, launching the muscle car era and transforming the Le Mans from a mild-mannered family car into a high-powered street machine. The design became more aggressive, with the sharp lines, bold grills, and muscular stance that would come to define Pontiac's performance cars. The early Le Mans models, while lackluster, set the stage for the transformation that was to come. They may not have had the excitement or power of the later iterations, but they were part of Pontiac's learning curve. As the brand began to explore what consumers really wanted in a mid-size car, they slowly moved toward the performance-oriented vision that would eventually make the Le Mans and GTO legends in their own right. In retrospect, the early Pontiac Tempest Le Mans can be seen as a car in transition, one that was still finding its footing in a competitive market. It lacked the aggression and power of the muscle cars that would follow, but it laid the groundwork for what would become one of Pontiac's most celebrated nameplates. Though dull by comparison to later models, the early Le Mans was an important stepping stone in Pontiac's journey toward performance dominance. The Lincoln Continental Mark III was introduced in the late 1960s as a bold attempt to re-establish Lincoln's dominance in the luxury car market. On paper, it had all the makings of a top-tier luxury vehicle, an imposing presence, a powerful engine, and a host of upscale features. However, despite these qualities, the Mark III ended up being a vehicle that symbolized excess more than elegance. Its enormous size and weight, combined with a design that leaned heavily on sheer mass rather than refined lines, made the car feel more bloated and unwieldy than sophisticated. One of the defining characteristics of the Continental Mark III was its sheer bulk. Measuring over 18 feet long and weighing nearly 5,000 pounds, the car was a behemoth on the road. Its gigantic proportions may have given it an imposing presence, but they also made it cumbersome to handle, especially in urban environments or tight spaces. The Mark III was the epitome of the land yacht era of American luxury cars, where bigger was presumed to be better. However, this emphasis on size came at the cost of driving dynamics. Navigating the Mark III required a steady hand and plenty of patience, as its size and weight made it feel more like steering a boat than a car. The car's styling was similarly excessive. While Lincoln tried to imbue the Mark III with a sense of luxury and grandeur, the result was a design that many felt was over the top. The front end was dominated by a large boxy grille and pop-up headlights, which gave the car an imposing but somewhat awkward face. The rear featured a faux spare tire hump on the trunk, a nod to the classic Continental models of the 1940s. But this design element felt more like a tacked-on attempt to evoke nostalgia than a truly elegant feature. Overall, the Mark III's design lacked the subtlety and refinement that one might expect from a high-end luxury car, leaning too heavily into extravagance without achieving true sophistication. Despite its flaws, the Lincoln Continental Mark III did have its share of luxury features, which helped it appeal to a certain demographic of buyers. The car came equipped with plush leather seats, power everything, and a smooth, quiet ride, qualities that were certainly appealing to those looking for comfort above all else. However, even these luxury touches couldn't fully mask the car's shortcomings. The Mark III's massive V8 engine, while powerful, was also a gas guzzler at a time when fuel efficiency was becoming a more significant concern. Its size combined with its thirst for fuel made it less practical than many of its competitors, even in the luxury segment. In terms of performance, the Mark III was solid but unspectacular. The 7.5-liter V8 engine produced plenty of torque, but the car's excessive weight dulled any sense of agility or responsiveness. It was designed for cruising in a straight line rather than nimble handling or spirited driving. For those who wanted a smooth, comfortable ride, the Mark III delivered, but anyone looking for a more engaging driving experience would have been disappointed. While the Mark III did succeed in bringing attention back to the Lincoln brand, it did so by embracing a vision of luxury that felt increasingly outdated. As the 1970s approached, the automotive world was beginning to shift away from the bloated, gas-guzzling cars of the 1960s toward more efficient, nimble, and refined vehicles. In this changing landscape, the Mark III felt like a relic of a bygone era, an overblown symbol of excess rather than a beacon of modern luxury. Ultimately, the Lincoln Continental Mark III serves as a reminder of a time when bigger was better in the world of American luxury cars. Its large proportions and extravagant design were a reflection of the era's tastes, but they also highlighted the limitations of that philosophy. Despite its attempts to bring back luxury to the Lincoln lineup, the Mark III lacked the finesse and elegance needed to truly succeed in an evolving market. It was a car that, while impressive in its scale and comfort, was often seen as more excessive than the sophisticated, marking a transitional period for both Lincoln and the automotive industry as a whole. The AMC Ambassador was AMC's attempt to break into the luxury car market, aiming to provide a premium option that could stand alongside established American luxury brands like Cadillac, Lincoln, and even Buick. Unfortunately, despite AMC's best efforts, the Ambassador struggled to live up to the expectations set by its more prestigious competitors. While the car did offer some higher-end features, its overall execution left much to be desired, resulting in a vehicle that felt more like a mid-tier offering dressed up to appear luxurious rather than a true luxury experience. One of the most glaring issues with the AMC Ambassador was its uninspired styling. While competing luxury cars from Cadillac and Lincoln boasted bold, distinctive designs that oozed elegance and presence, the Ambassador's exterior was more conservative and plain. Its boxy silhouette lacked the sophistication and sleek lines that characterized true luxury vehicles of the time. The front grille, while attempting to make a statement, often came across as awkwardly proportioned and lacked the commanding presence seen in more iconic luxury cars. The car's overall design simply didn't have the visual impact needed to turn heads or distinguish itself in a market where appearance was a key factor in conveying luxury. The interior of the AMC Ambassador, though comfortable, failed to reach the heights of refinement that buyers in the luxury segment expected. While it was equipped with some premium touches, such as plush seating and various power features, the materials used often felt more suited to mid-range vehicles. There was an attempt to deliver a high-end experience, but it didn't match the sumptuous interiors offered by Cadillac or Lincoln, which were known for their opulence and attention to detail. In many ways, the Ambassador felt like an upgraded version of AMC's standard sedans, rather than a dedicated luxury vehicle built from the ground up. Performance-wise, the Ambassador was similarly underwhelming. While it offered V8 engine options, the car lacked the power and refinement that characterized true luxury cars. Cadillac and Lincoln vehicles were not only known for their power, but also for their smooth, effortless driving experiences. The Ambassador, by comparison, felt less refined, with an engine that could sometimes feel underpowered for a car of its size. Its ride quality was decent, but lacked the cloud-like suspension systems that made driving luxury cars like the Lincoln Continental or Cadillac DeVille feel like gliding on air. Instead, the Ambassador's driving experience was more akin to that of a regular family sedan, competent but far from luxurious. Another significant issue with the AMC Ambassador was its pricing. Despite being positioned as a premium offering, the car was often seen as overpriced for what it delivered. Buyers looking for luxury cars had plenty of options, and for a similar price, or even slightly more, they could get a far more refined and powerful vehicle from one of the more established luxury brands. The Ambassador didn't have the brand prestige or the performance to justify its cost, and as a result, it often felt like an expensive compromise. It wasn't luxurious enough to compete with Cadillac and Lincoln, and it wasn't affordable enough to appeal to buyers who wanted a value-oriented option. While AMC tried to market the Ambassador as a premium car, it ultimately failed to find its place in the luxury market. The car lacked the boldness and refinement needed to compete with true luxury vehicles, and its styling, performance, and features simply couldn't justify its price tag. Instead of making a strong impression as a luxury contender, the Ambassador ended up being perceived as an overpriced, underwhelming option that couldn't hold its own against the competition. In hindsight, the AMC Ambassador serves as a reminder of how difficult it is for automakers to successfully break into the luxury market. It wasn't enough for AMC to simply add a few upscale features and a higher price tag. The Ambassador needed to offer something truly special and distinctive to win over buyers, and it simply didn't deliver. By the time it left the market, the Ambassador was largely forgotten, overshadowed by more successful luxury models from brands that had long since mastered the art of creating vehicles that were both powerful and luxurious. For AMC, the Ambassador was a well-intentioned but ultimately unsuccessful effort to punch above its weight in a fiercely competitive segment. The Ford Falcon, introduced in 1960, was Ford's answer to the growing demand for small, affordable cars. Designed to be practical and economical, the Falcon's mission was clear: provide dependable transportation for the average American without the frills and extra costs associated with larger, more luxurious models. While the Falcon certainly fulfilled its role as a reliable, no-nonsense vehicle, it was exactly this simplicity that made it somewhat forgettable, especially in a decade that became defined by bold and iconic designs. At first glance, the Falcon's design was conservative, almost to a fault. Its clean lines and minimalist aesthetic made it look more like an appliance than a statement. The car's proportions were well balanced, but in an era when automakers were starting to take more risks with flashy, futuristic designs, the Falcon played it safe. Its grille, headlights, and overall body shape were functional but bland, lacking the visual punch of cars like the Chevrolet Impala or even Ford's own Galaxy. The Falcon didn't turn heads, it simply got the job done. In terms of performance, the Falcon was dependable but uninspiring. Ford offered a range of engines, from a modest inline-six to a small V8, but none of these powertrains were designed to impress performance enthusiasts. The Falcon was built for fuel efficiency and affordability, and while it performed well enough for daily driving, it lacked the excitement that other cars of the era, like the Chevy Corvair or the Pontiac GTO, were beginning to offer. It wasn't sluggish, but it certainly wasn't thrilling to drive. What really sealed the Falcon's fate as a two-plane car was the introduction of the Ford Mustang in 1964. Built on the Falcon's platform, the Mustang was everything the Falcon wasn't: stylish, sporty, and exciting. While the Falcon continued to serve its purpose as a sensible family car, the Mustang captured the spirit of the 1960s with its sleek design and performance options. The Falcon, by comparison, felt out of touch, a relic of the early 60s before cars became statements of personality and performance. Where the Mustang symbolized freedom and youth, the Falcon remained conservative and utilitarian. This contrast between the Falcon and the Mustang highlights the Falcon's biggest flaw. It was simply too conservative in an era when car buyers were starting to crave more excitement. As muscle cars and more adventurous designs became the norm, the Falcon's lack of style and character became more noticeable. Even though it sold well and was a practical choice, it never captured the imagination of the public in the way that the Mustang or other cars of the mid-1960s did. To its credit, the Falcon was an important car for Ford. It helped the company regain footing in the compact car market and provided the foundation for the Mustang, which went on to become one of the most iconic cars in automotive history. But as the 1960s wore on, the Falcon's plain design and conservative approach made it seem increasingly outdated and uninspired. It wasn't a bad car. It was simply overshadowed by more exciting, more memorable vehicles that came to define the decade. In the end, the Ford Falcon's legacy is one of reliability and practicality, but it lacks the stylistic flair and performance excitement that would have made it truly memorable. It served its purpose well, but in a time of bold experimentation in automotive design, the Falcon was just too plain to stand out. It's a car remembered more for what it enabled, the Mustang, than for anything it achieved on its own. And while it may have been a sensible choice for its time, the Falcon's understated nature meant it never reached the heights of popularity or admiration that other Ford models enjoyed. The early 1960s Dodge Dart had all the makings of a car designed to capture a wide range of buyers, affordable, practical, and positioned as a step up from Dodge's more basic offerings. However, despite these intentions, the first iterations of the Dodge Dart left much to be desired, both in terms of design and performance. Launched in 1960, the early Dart models were met with mixed reviews, particularly because of their awkward proportions, dull styling, and uninspired performance, which made them largely forgettable compared to other cars of the era. In terms of aesthetics, the early Darts were a far cry from the bold, sleek designs that would dominate the 1960s. The styling of the first models was conservative, with boxy lines and an overall lack of visual cohesion. The Dart's body had awkward proportions, with a short, stumpy front end and a longer, somewhat ungainly rear. The result was a car that looked unbalanced, almost as though it hadn't been fully thought out. Its plain, uninspired design lacked the flair that other cars of the time were starting to embrace, such as the Pontiac Bonneville or the Chevrolet Impala. There was nothing particularly offensive about the way it looked, but nothing exciting either. It was just there. Adding to the car's underwhelming presence was its performance. The early Darts were not known for power or speed. While Dodge offered a range of engine options, from a modest inline-six to a small V8, none of them gave the Dart the muscle needed to stand out in an increasingly performance-driven market. This was especially problematic as the 1960s progressed, a decade in which automakers began focusing heavily on producing cars that could deliver both style and power. The Dart's sluggish acceleration and lackluster driving dynamics made it a forgettable choice for drivers who craved excitement behind the wheel. Underpowered and saddled with unremarkable styling, the early Dart struggled to find its footing. Though it wasn't a bad car by any means, it was reliable and affordable. Its conservative design and weak engine options made it hard to stand out in a market that was rapidly moving toward bolder, more powerful vehicles. Competitors like the Ford Falcon and the Chevrolet Corvair offered similar practicality, but with a bit more charm and innovation, making them more appealing to buyers. One of the Dart's biggest flaws was that it didn't quite know what it wanted to be. It wasn't a full-size sedan, nor was it a true compact, falling somewhere in the middle in terms of size and price. This lack of a clear identity contributed to its middling sales and lackluster reputation in its early years. It was a car that was perfectly fine for daily transportation, but didn't inspire much excitement or loyalty among its owners. In fact, many who bought the early Dart did so out of practicality rather than passion for the car itself. Fortunately for Dodge, the Dart wouldn't remain in this state of mediocrity for long. As the 1960s wore on, Dodge took steps to revamp the Dart, both in terms of design and performance. By the mid-1960s, the Dart had shed its awkward proportions and dull styling, emerging as a more streamlined and visually appealing car. Dodge also introduced more powerful engine options, including the legendary 340 V8, which gave the Dart the muscle it had been sorely lacking in its early years. These changes helped the Dart evolve into a more competitive and desirable car, and it eventually gained a solid following, particularly among muscle car enthusiasts. However, the early 1960s Dodge Dart remains a largely forgotten chapter in the car's history. Overshadowed by its later, more successful iterations, the first Dart models are often remembered as underwhelming and unremarkable. They weren't outright failures, but they also weren't the kind of cars that left a lasting impression. The early Dart was a car that did its job, but little more. Its awkward proportions, dull styling, and underpowered performance made it a forgettable entry in Dodge's lineup, one that the company would thankfully improve upon as the decade progressed. In retrospect, The early Dart serves as a reminder of how crucial it is for a car to have both a strong design and a clear sense of purpose. While the Dart eventually found its stride later in the 1960s, its early years were marked by a lack of direction, both aesthetically and mechanically. It may not have been a disaster, but it certainly wasn't a standout, and it's no surprise that the first Dodge Dart models have faded from the collective memory of car enthusiasts. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS has earned its place in automotive history as one of the defining muscle cars of the era, celebrated for its powerful performance and iconic design. However, not all Chevelles enjoyed the same level of acclaim. Among them, the Chevelle 300 base model stands out as a stark contrast to its more celebrated sibling. Introduced as a more affordable and practical alternative, the Chevelle 300 aimed to provide reliable transportation at a budget-friendly price. Unfortunately, its stripped-down nature and lack of distinctive features made it far less memorable and significantly overshadowed by the SS models. The Chevelle 300 was designed to be the entry-level option in the Chevelle lineup. As such, it offered fewer amenities and a more basic build compared to its higher-end counterparts. The design of the Chevelle 300 was functional but uninspired, lacking the sporty flair that characterized the SS models. Its exterior was simple and straightforward, with a plain grille, modest trim, and an overall appearance that didn't draw much attention. Unlike the Chevelle SS, which boasted aggressive styling cues and muscular lines, the 300 model's design was decidedly utilitarian, aimed at keeping production costs low rather than making a bold statement. Performance was another area where the Chevelle 300 fell short of its more illustrious siblings. While the SS models featured powerful engines and impressive performance capabilities, the base 300 model was equipped with more modest power plants. These engines were designed to deliver adequate, but not exhilarating performance. The 300 was perfectly competent for everyday driving, but lacked the punch and excitement that came with the SS versions. Its handling and acceleration were unremarkable, and it didn't offer the same level of driving thrill that enthusiasts had come to associate with the Chevelle name. Inside, the Chevelle 300 was even more stripped down. The interior was functional but sparse, with basic seats, minimal trim, and few luxury features. While it was practical and comfortable enough for daily use, it didn't offer the same level of refinement or style found in the higher-end models. The cabin of the 300 was designed to be functional and durable, but it lacked the flair and attention to detail that would make it stand out in a crowd. In terms of market impact, the Chevelle 300 did its job as a budget-friendly option. It provided a practical and affordable vehicle for those who needed a dependable car without the higher price tag of the SS models. However, it didn't capture the imagination of car enthusiasts or make a lasting impression on the automotive landscape. While it sold in decent numbers, it didn't inspire the same level of enthusiasm or passion as the Chevelle SS. The 300 model was often seen as a mere footnote in the Chevelle lineup, overshadowed by the more glamorous and performance-oriented versions. Despite its lack of excitement, the Chevelle 300 played an important role in Chevrolet's lineup. It represented the brand's ability to offer a range of vehicles to suit different needs and budgets. While it may not have been a standout in terms of design or performance, it fulfilled its purpose as an affordable and practical option for many buyers. Over time, the Chevelle 300 has faded into the background, with the more memorable Chevelle SS models taking center stage in automotive history. The base model's unremarkable design and modest performance make it a footnote in the story of the Chevelle, remembered more for what it wasn't than for what it was. It wasn't a disaster, but it certainly didn't capture the imagination or excitement that defined the Chevelle's most celebrated iterations. In retrospect, the Chevelle 300 serves as a reminder of how crucial it is for a car to have a strong identity and compelling features to make a lasting impact. While it fulfilled its role as a budget-friendly option, it lacked the characteristics that would make it memorable or exciting. The Chevelle SS, with its powerful performance and striking design, continues to be celebrated as a classic, while the Chevelle 300 remains a less notable part of the model's history, functional but not particularly remarkable. The Oldsmobile F85, introduced in the early 1960s, was Oldsmobile's foray into the compact car market, designed to cater to the growing demand for economical and practical vehicles. At a time when American consumers were beginning to prioritize fuel efficiency and affordability, the F-85 was GM's answer to the shifting automotive landscape. However, despite its intentions, the F-85 struggled to make a significant impact and has since been remembered as a rather unremarkable entry in the compact car segment. From a performance perspective, the Oldsmobile F-85 faced several challenges. It was equipped with a range of modest engine options, including a 2.8-liter inline-six and a 3.4-liter V8, neither of which was particularly inspiring. While these engines were adequate for everyday driving, they lacked the power and performance that many drivers were beginning to crave. The F-85's acceleration was sluggish, and its overall driving dynamics were far from exhilarating. In an era when other automakers were pushing the boundaries of performance with more powerful and engaging options, the F-85's lackluster performance did little to capture the public's attention or enthusiasm. In terms of design, the Oldsmobile F-85 was equally uninspired. Its exterior was characterized by a boxy and conservative shape that failed to stand out in a market increasingly defined by bold and dynamic styling. The F-85's design was functional, but lacked the flair and innovation that could have set it apart from its competitors. The car's simple lines and unremarkable proportions contributed to a sense of blandness that made it easily forgettable. In comparison to other compact cars of the era that featured more distinctive and eye-catching designs, the F-85's styling was decidedly underwhelming. The interior of the F-85 followed suit with its exterior design, offering a basic and utilitarian cabin that prioritized practicality over comfort or luxury. The interior layout was straightforward, with an emphasis on durability and ease of use rather than aesthetics or advanced features. While the cabin provided adequate space for passengers and was designed to be functional, it lacked the refinements and amenities that could have made it more appealing to potential buyers. The focus on utility over style resulted in an interior that, while serviceable, did little to enhance the overall appeal of the F-85. Despite these drawbacks, the Oldsmobile F-85 was built with a clear goal in mind: to offer a cost-effective and reliable compact car for budget-conscious consumers. In this regard, it did succeed to some extent, providing a basic and practical option for those looking for affordable transportation. However, in a market where consumers were increasingly seeking vehicles that offered both performance and style, the F-85's inability to deliver on these fronts limited its appeal. The F-85's struggle to find a foothold in the competitive compact car market was compounded by its lack of distinctive features and failure to differentiate itself from other models. While it served its purpose as a basic transportation option, it did not manage to capture the interest or excitement of the driving public. The car's muted performance and uninspired design meant that it was overshadowed by more dynamic and innovative offerings from other manufacturers. As the automotive industry evolved and consumer preferences continued to shift, the Oldsmobile F-85 gradually faded from prominence. It became a footnote in the history of compact cars, overshadowed by more memorable and influential models that offered a better combination of performance, style, and innovation. The F-85's legacy is one of well-intentioned but ultimately uninspired design, a vehicle that tried to meet the needs of a changing market but failed to leave a lasting impression. In summary, the Oldsmobile F-85 was an early attempt to capture the compact car market with a focus on affordability and practicality. However, its underwhelming performance, bland design, and lack of distinguishing features meant that it never achieved the level of success or recognition that Oldsmobile had hoped for. While it provided a basic and reliable transportation option for its time, the F-85 ultimately struggled to stand out in a crowded and competitive market, fading into obscurity as other, more dynamic models took center stage. The Mercury Comet Cyclone GT, launched in the late 1960s, was Mercury's ambitious attempt to carve out a niche in the burgeoning muscle car market. With its sleek aspirations and promising performance features, the Cyclone GT was designed to compete head-to-head with muscle car icons such as the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Camaro. However, despite its potential, the Cyclone GT's journey was marred by a series of design and performance missteps that ultimately prevented it from becoming a standout contender in the muscle car arena. At the heart of the Cyclone GT was its engine, a powerful 390 cubic inch V8, which was capable of delivering robust performance and acceleration. On paper, this engine had the potential to make the Cyclone GT a formidable player in the muscle car market, offering the kind of performance that enthusiasts were looking for. However, the car's performance capabilities were often overshadowed by its design flaws and overall execution. One of the major issues with the Cyclone GT was its styling. While Mercury aimed to create a visually striking muscle car, the end result was a design that many critics and buyers found to be awkward and unappealing. The Cyclone GT featured a bulky and heavy frame, which combined with its somewhat clunky styling elements, contributed to a visual appearance that was far from sleek or aggressive. Unlike the more streamlined and aggressive lines of the Mustang or Camaro, the Cyclone GT's design lacked the dynamic and sporty aesthetic that had become synonymous with muscle cars. The car's heavy frame also had a tangible impact on its handling and performance. Despite having a powerful engine, the Cyclone GT's weight made it less agile and responsive compared to its competitors. This disparity in handling characteristics meant that the Cyclone GT struggled to provide the engaging driving experience that muscle car enthusiasts were seeking. Instead of delivering the exhilarating performance expected from a muscle car, the Cyclone GT's handling was often described as cumbersome and less refined. In addition to its styling and handling issues, the Cyclone GT's market positioning was another factor that hindered its success. While Mercury was trying to position the Cyclone GT as a competitor in the muscle car segment, it faced stiff competition from well-established and more popular models like the Mustang and Camaro. These competitors not only boasted superior designs and performance, but also had strong brand recognition and fan followings. As a result, the Cyclone GT struggled to gain traction in a market where buyers had more appealing alternatives to choose from. Despite its shortcomings, the Cyclone GT did have some redeeming features. It offered a high level of comfort and a decent range of standard features, which provided a more refined driving experience compared to some of its more Spartan competitors. However, these strengths were not enough to compensate for the car's fundamental design and performance issues. Ultimately, the Mercury Comet Cyclone GT's attempt to establish itself as a muscle car fell short of expectations. While it had the potential with its powerful engine, its awkward styling, heavy frame, and lackluster handling prevented it from achieving the level of success and recognition enjoyed by its rivals. The Cyclone GT's shortcomings were compounded by the presence of more compelling and better executed options in the muscle car market, which left it struggling to find its place and gain the attention of buyers. As a result, the Cyclone GT is often remembered as a missed opportunity, an ambitious effort that failed to live up to its potential and ultimately faded into obscurity in the annals of automotive history. The Plymouth Valiant, introduced in the early 1960s, was designed to be a practical and economical compact car. While it achieved its goals in terms of reliability and affordability, it was also known for its distinctly unattractive design, which earned it a place among the less aesthetically pleasing vehicles of its era. When the Valiant first hit the market, it was a response to the growing demand for smaller, more fuel-efficient cars that could offer dependable transportation at a lower cost. This was a time when the automotive industry was shifting focus toward producing vehicles that could cater to the needs of the average driver, who was increasingly looking for something practical rather than flashy. In this regard, the Valiant did meet its primary objectives. It was designed to be reliable and functional, serving as a no-nonsense option for those who prioritize practicality over style. However, the Valiant's design was a different story. Its appearance was characterized by a boxy and angular shape that was quite a departure from the more streamlined and stylish vehicles of the 1960s. The car's body was rectangular with flat surfaces, contributing to an overall utilitarian look. This design choice was a stark contrast to the rounded and dynamic forms that were becoming popular during that time. The Valiant's exterior, with its awkward grille and flat lines, was seen as drab and uninspired. It lacked the flair and dynamism that were becoming hallmarks of contemporary automotive design. The front grille of the Valiant, in particular, was a point of contention. Its proportions and design did little to enhance the car's appearance, and it often looked out of place compared to the more visually compelling options on the market. The grille's lack of character and the car's boxy shape made it seem more like a functional tool than a stylish vehicle. In a decade known for bold designs and innovative styling, the Valiant's conservative look felt like a step backward. Inside, the Valiant continued the theme of practicality over aesthetics. The interior was designed to be straightforward and functional, offering basic comfort and usability. While this approach suited the car's target market, it did little to enhance its appeal. The interior featured simple controls and seating that prioritized function over luxury or style. This no-frills approach was consistent with the car's overall design philosophy, but did not contribute to making it a standout choice for those seeking a more engaging driving experience. Despite these shortcomings in design, the Plymouth Valiant did manage to find its niche. Its reliability and affordability made it a popular choice among buyers who valued these attributes over visual appeal. The car was particularly appealing to those who needed a dependable daily driver without the extra bells and whistles that could drive up the cost. In this sense, the Valiant succeeded in fulfilling its role as a practical and economical option in a crowded market. Looking back, the Valiant's place in automotive history highlights the fact that success doesn't always hinge on style. While the car may not have been celebrated for its aesthetics, it demonstrated that practicality and reliability could also be valuable attributes. The Valiant's design, though often criticized as unattractive, was a reflection of the priorities and values of its time, emphasizing function and cost-effectiveness over visual appeal. In summary, the Plymouth Valiant serves as a reminder that even vehicles that are not renowned for their design can leave a significant mark on the industry. Its success in meeting the needs of budget-conscious buyers underscores the importance of practicality in automotive design. While it may have been overshadowed by more exciting and stylish models, the Valiant's contribution to making reliable transportation accessible to the average consumer remains an important part of its legacy. The Studebaker Lark was introduced in 1959 as a bold move by a beleaguered Studebaker corporation, struggling to regain its footing in a rapidly evolving automotive market. As one of the last significant efforts to save the company from financial ruin, the Lark was intended to capture the attention of buyers seeking an economical and compact car. However, instead of becoming the vehicle that would turn the tide for Studebaker, the Lark ended up symbolizing the company's decline and eventual collapse. From its inception, the Studebaker Lark was designed to be an affordable, practical car. The idea was to offer a compact vehicle that could meet the needs of the average American driver during a time when smaller, more economical cars were gaining popularity. The Lark's design was straightforward and functional, characterized by a boxy, unadorned shape. The exterior was designed to be utilitarian, with minimal styling flourishes and a focus on practicality rather than flair. This lack of design innovation made the Lark appear uninspired and somewhat generic, failing to capture the attention of car buyers who were increasingly looking for more distinctive and exciting vehicles. One of the major issues with the Lark was its build quality. Despite its promise of affordability, the Lark was plagued by problems related to its construction and materials. The car's components were often criticized for being subpar, and many buyers reported frequent mechanical issues and a general sense of dissatisfaction with the vehicle. These quality concerns were compounded by the fact that the Lark's engineering did not match the standards set by competitors, making it seem even less appealing in a market full of more reliable and well-constructed vehicles. The Lark's lack of appeal was further exacerbated by the intense competition it faced. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the automotive market was becoming increasingly crowded with new and exciting models from manufacturers like Ford, Chevrolet, and Plymouth. These competitors were rolling out compact cars that offered a combination of style, performance, and reliability. In contrast, the Lark struggled to make a meaningful impact due to its uninspired design and mediocre performance. The car's lack of standout features and its underwhelming driving experience made it easy to overlook in favor of more attractive alternatives. The Lark's role as Studebaker's final major offering added a layer of historical significance to its story. As the company's last major attempt to revitalize its fortunes, the Lark became a poignant symbol of Studebaker's struggles and ultimate decline. Despite the company's hopes that the Lark would be a game-changer, it failed to achieve its intended goal of rescuing the brand. The car's inability to capture the market's interest and its poor performance further highlighted the difficulties Studebaker faced in adapting to the changing automotive landscape. The Studebaker Lark's legacy is a reminder of the challenges involved in trying to revive a struggling brand in a competitive industry. Its failure to turn around Studebaker's fortunes underscores the harsh realities of business survival and the complexities of automotive design. While the Lark was designed with the best intentions, it ultimately became a symbol of the company's decline rather than a vehicle that would lead to a successful resurgence. In retrospect, the Studebaker Lark represents a missed opportunity for a company that had once been a respected name in American automotive history. Its design shortcomings, combined with poor build quality and intense competition, meant that the Lark was unable to achieve the success that was hoped for. Instead, it stands as a historical footnote in the story of Studebaker, illustrating the difficulties faced by companies trying to reinvent themselves in a rapidly changing industry. Despite its role in Studebaker's history, the Lark remains a testament to the challenges of automotive design and the unforgiving nature of the marketplace. Though technically introduced in the late 1950s, the Ford Edsel extended its infamy well into the 1960s, cementing its place as one of the most infamous failures in automotive history. Ford's ambition was to create a revolutionary new vehicle that would redefine the market and set new standards in automotive design and luxury. The Edsel was launched with considerable fanfare in a marketing campaign that promised a car of exceptional innovation and style. But the reality fell far short of the lofty promises. The Edsel's design was one of its most controversial aspects. The car featured a distinctive front grille that Ford hoped would set it apart from competitors, but instead it became a symbol of its failure. The grille was derisively compared to a toilet seat, a comparison that did little to enhance the Edsel's image. The car's overall design was characterized by its unusual proportions and a host of design features that many found unattractive. While Ford's intent was to make the Edsel stand out, the result was a vehicle that was often described as awkward and unattractive, failing to capture the consumer's imagination. Ford's ambitious plans for the Edsel were not limited to its design. The company aimed to introduce a range of advanced features and innovations that were supposed to make the car a game-changer in the industry. These included new technologies and features that Ford believed would set the Edsel apart from its competitors. However, many of these innovations were either poorly executed or did not meet consumer expectations. The car was plagued by production delays and quality issues, further diminishing its appeal. The Edsel was marketed as a premium option, but its actual performance and build quality did not justify its higher price tag. The marketing campaign for the Edsel was one of the most aggressive in automotive history, yet it backfired spectacularly. Ford had invested heavily in promoting the Edsel as the car of the future, a vehicle that would embody luxury and cutting-edge technology. However, the car's actual features and performance did not live up to the hype. This disparity between expectation and reality created a sense of disillusionment among consumers, leading to widespread disappointment. The Edsel's failure to deliver on its promises was a major factor in its commercial collapse. As sales began to falter, Ford's management faced increasing pressure to address the car's shortcomings. Despite efforts to rectify issues and improve the Edsel's market position, the damage had been done. The Edsel's reputation had suffered irreparable harm, and consumer confidence in the brand was eroded. By the end of 1960, it was clear that the Edsel was not going to achieve the success Ford had envisioned. The decision was made to phase out the model, marking a dramatic end to one of the most ambitious and ultimately disastrous ventures in automotive history. The Edsel's story is often used as a case study in marketing and product development failures. It highlights the risks of overhyping a product and the importance of aligning marketing strategies with consumer expectations. Despite its innovative aspirations, the Edsel became a cautionary tale of how even the most well-intentioned projects can falter when they fail to resonate with the target audience. The car's legacy serves as a reminder of the challenges involved in creating a successful new product and the pitfalls of ambitious but poorly executed plans. In retrospect, the Ford Edsel remains a potent symbol of failure, a testament to the unpredictable nature of the automotive market and the delicate balance required between innovation and consumer appeal. Its brief and troubled existence underscores the complexities of introducing a new vehicle and the potential consequences of missing the mark. The Edsel story continues to be studied and analyzed as an example of what can go wrong when a product fails to meet the expectations set by its own marketing and promises. The Rambler Marlin was AMC's bold attempt to carve out a niche in the rapidly evolving automotive market of the 1960s. Introduced in 1965, the Marlin was envisioned as a distinctive, sporty fastback that would set AMC apart from its competitors. However, despite its innovative intent, the Marlin's design and performance shortcomings meant that it never quite lived up to its ambitious goals. From a design perspective, the Marlin was a striking departure from the more conventional cars of its time. Its most notable feature was its fastback roofline, designed to convey a sense of sleekness and speed. The intention behind this design choice was to create a car that combined the practicality of a family vehicle with the sporty allure of a performance car. However, the execution of this concept fell short. The Marlin's roofline, though distinctive, was poorly proportioned and led to an overall silhouette that many found awkward. The rear end in particular was a point of contention. Its oversized, bulbous shape seemed out of sync with the rest of the car's lines, giving it a somewhat clunky and unrefined appearance. Instead of achieving a streamlined, sporty look, the Marlin's design often appeared haphazard and disconnected. The Marlin was equipped with a range of engine options, including a V8, which was intended to deliver the performance expected of a sporty car. Despite these promising specifications, the Marlin struggled in practice. Its weight and design quirks hindered its agility and speed, leaving it underwhelming compared to its more dynamic competitors. The car's performance was often criticized for not matching the expectations set by its sporty image. While it had the potential to be a strong contender in the muscle car market, the Marlin fell short in delivering the exhilarating driving experience that enthusiasts were seeking. The timing of the Marlin's introduction also worked against it. By the mid-1960s, the automotive landscape was shifting rapidly. The muscle car craze was in full swing, and consumers were increasingly gravitating towards cars with aggressive styling and high-performance engines. The Marlin, with its more understated design and performance capabilities, struggled to stand out in this evolving market. It failed to capture the imagination of buyers who were looking for the next big thing in muscle and performance cars. AMC's marketing strategy for the Marlin aimed to position it as a unique and exciting alternative to the more conventional offerings of the time. The company hoped that the Marlin's distinctive design would set it apart and attract a dedicated following. However, the car's inability to live up to these marketing promises contributed to its lackluster reception. The Marlin's design flaws and underwhelming performance meant that it was quickly overshadowed by more successful and polished models from other manufacturers. Despite its innovative approach, the Rambler Marlin was ultimately a commercial failure. It is remembered more for its missed opportunities and design shortcomings than for any lasting impact. The Marlin's ambition to blend practicality with sporty flair was undermined by its execution, which failed to resonate with buyers. The car serves as a reminder of the challenges inherent in automotive design, where even the most ambitious ideas can falter if they do not meet market expectations or deliver on their promises. In retrospect, the Rambler Marlin is a fascinating example of how a well-intentioned design can sometimes miss the mark. Its unique approach and the effort to bring something different to the market are notable, but its ultimate failure highlights the difficulties of achieving success in a competitive and rapidly changing industry. The Marlin remains a curious footnote in automotive history, a symbol of ambition and innovation that ultimately fell short of its goals. The Chevrolet Corvair, introduced in 1960, remains one of the most controversial and infamous cars of the 1960s. It was a bold and innovative vehicle, primarily due to its rear-engine layout and air-cooled engine design, which set it apart from the conventional front-engine, water-cooled cars of the time. However, despite its forward-thinking approach, the Corvair's legacy is marred by significant safety concerns that ultimately led to its downfall. The Corvair's rear-engine configuration was intended to provide better handling and balance, reminiscent of the rear-engine European cars that were gaining popularity. Additionally, its air-cooled engine was designed to reduce maintenance issues associated with radiator systems and to improve the car's efficiency. At first glance, these features seemed like promising innovations, setting the Corvair apart as a unique and modern option in the American automotive landscape. However, the Corvair's innovative design came with its own set of problems. The car's handling issues were its most significant flaw, a fact that came to the forefront thanks to Ralph Nader's groundbreaking 1965 book, Unsafe at Any Speed. Nader's book meticulously documented the Corvair's propensity for dangerous handling and stability problems. Specifically, the Corvair suffered from oversteer and a tendency to lose control, particularly in situations where drivers attempted sharp turns or sudden maneuvers. These issues were exacerbated by the car's rear-engine design, which made it prone to instability and difficult to control. Nader's criticism, coupled with high-profile safety investigations, significantly damaged the Corvair's reputation. The car's handling problems were seen as not merely a design quirk, but as fundamental flaws that compromised the safety of its occupants. The negative publicity generated by Unsafe at Any Speed had a profound impact on public perception, leading to a dramatic decline in sales and consumer confidence. In addition to the handling issues, the Corvair faced other challenges that contributed to its poor reputation. The car's unique design elements, while innovative, also made it more difficult and expensive to repair and maintain. The rear engine configuration created a cramped engine compartment, complicating access for routine maintenance. Furthermore, the air-cooled engine, while reducing some maintenance needs, had its own set of problems, including poor performance in cold weather and less efficiency compared to water-cooled engines. Despite these issues, the Corvair did have its share of supporters who appreciated its innovative approach and distinctiveness. For some, the car's unconventional design and engineering were seen as a bold departure from the norm, embodying a spirit of experimentation and forward-thinking. However, these positive aspects were overshadowed by the widespread safety concerns and the car's inability to live up to its initial promise. The Chevrolet Corvair was eventually discontinued in 1969, with General Motors shifting its focus to other models that could offer better safety and reliability. The Corvair's brief but tumultuous history serves as a poignant reminder of the challenges associated with automotive innovation. While it remains a symbol of both ambitious engineering and the pitfalls of neglecting safety considerations, the Corvair's story highlights the complex interplay between innovation, consumer safety, and market success. In retrospect, the Chevrolet Corvair represents a unique chapter in automotive history, a vehicle that aimed to push boundaries but ultimately struggled with critical flaws. Its legacy is a testament to the importance of addressing safety concerns and the difficulties of balancing innovation with practical, real-world considerations. The Corvair's story continues to be studied and discussed as an example of how even the most well-intentioned innovations can falter when they fail to meet essential standards of safety and reliability. And that's our list. These 15 dumbest and worst cars from the 1960s serve as a reminder that not every car from this iconic decade was a winner. While some models have been forgotten, others live on in infamy. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more car history and automotive fails.